Sego, Skanagoga, Lela Stats Youngats, Anawara Niwa Git Darodan, Ganyak Gehaga Niwa Gotwindrodan, Oswego Nida Wageno. Hello, my name's Layla Stats. I'm Mohawk Turtle Clan from the Six Nations of the Grand River. We're here at Ganastado, one of the original land-back sites on Six Nations in our fight, and I'm really honored to be here today. I want to first acknowledge the land and the water that we're all connected to. You know, wherever it is that you're watching this, the land is underneath of you, and she's supporting you. According to our Haudenosaunee cultures and traditions, we call it the Ahodan Gariwadegwa, and that means the words before all else. And it's the Thanksgiving prayer. And so before we do anything, any kind of gathering, anything of significance, when we come together, we first bring our minds together in a good way to acknowledge our connection to all of these elements of creation, the water, the animals, the trees, the plants, the birds, the fish, the oceans, the skies, the thunders, Creator. And it's one of those fundamental, foundational lessons that brought me back to my culture. I just want you to take that moment just to plant your feet on the ground and just realize that we are all together. You know, we're maybe virtual all over the world, but in this moment, we're all connected. And thankful for everyone that's joining us today to be part of this.
This pandemic has affected women more adversely than anybody else. It is incumbent upon us as women to make sure that things are remolded in our favor.
Welcome to Toronto International Women's Day 2022. We are joined with so many others across the globe coming together for International Women's Day. We have suffered through 2 years of the COVID pandemic that has created an even greater suffering from the ongoing economic crisis, the climate crisis, and the systemic racism of our society. We organize in the spirit of the immigrant women garment workers who walked off the job in 1908 in New York City, which inspired the call in 1910 for International Women's Day to be celebrated every year. We organize in the spirit of the thousands of women mill workers who struck in 1912 in Massachusetts, speaking 22 different languages, built unity, and won against their bosses. We are against the stealing of Indigenous lands. We are against the ongoing sexism, racism, and heterosexism that so many of us are struggling against. We know that there's a growing divide between us, struggling from day to day for the dignity and respect that we deserve. We know that mostly Black, Indigenous, and racialized women are suffering from this crisis, from the frontline workers who have put themselves at risk, keeping the economy running, providing the necessary services in healthcare, transit, education, retail, and so many other areas of our society. We are providing a platform for the voices of those in struggle to ring out, telling how they have stood up to the challenges on the front lines. They represent many communities, and all share a willingness to fight for a new world and a better world. They also share a tremendous optimism, so allow yourselves to be inspired by their stories.
Climate justice now! Say climate justice now!
For the past few years, Fridays for Future Toronto has been mobilizing students, parents, teachers, workers, any adult allies to get on the streets, cancel the workday, cancel the school day, and march to demand climate justice. This past year, we've seen a lot of devastation brought on by the climate crisis, and it's only drawn attention to how urgent the situation really is. We saw a town burn completely down to the ground out in BC because of a wildfire that wouldn't have been so severe if not for the climate crisis. We saw really devastating flooding too that wiped out a lot of towns and farmland in BC out on the west coast, displacing so many families. And all the while we're seeing policies that make commitments but don't actually create real action on the climate crisis. And the policies definitely don't take into account the way that marginalized folks and MAPA folks are the most affected by the climate crisis. When I say climate justice, I'm referring to a type of activism that recognizes that the climate crisis is not just an environmental crisis, but it's also a social justice crisis. We can't just rely on science and technology to solve all our problems, but we really need to get down to the root inequities, fix those before we can build a better future for all together. The climate justice movement would not be a thing without the incredible resilience and leadership of MAPA folks. MAPA, or MAPA, is an acronym that stands for the most affected peoples and areas. When I think about MAPA folks, I think about the many women and non-binary activists in the Global South fighting fossil fuel expansion projects in their communities that are imposed on them by the Global North from countries like Canada. In particular, I think about the Recon Africa expansion happening in Namibia that will destroy the Okavango Delta, and the incredible resilience shown by activists, particularly women and non-binary activists, on the ground. I also think about MAPA folks in the Global North, for example, here in so-called Canada with the Indigenous resilience shown by matriarchs, women, Two-Spirit people. The Wet'suwet'en people have been showing a lot of resilience to defend their land, their water, and just life in general from the Coastal GasLink pipeline project, which is a pipeline that is being built without their consent on unceded Wet'suwet'en territory. I hope today I painted a picture not of victimhood, but of resilience, and that I've shown how important it is for settlers such as me to show solidarity with MAPA folks everywhere. And I really hope to see all of you at future actions, strikes or marches, so that we can all show our solidarity for MAPA together. And happy International Women's Day.
We've been talking about females on the front line and what it means and how it is difficult. It's difficult to be away from your kids. It's difficult to put your body on the line. It's difficult to think about the risks to your family. But then you think about, what if I don't do it? And if I don't take a stand, and if we don't use our voices together, what will it look like for my children? What will it look like for their children? And we think of those 7 generations in the future, especially as women, because we're the ones that are, giving birth to those generations.
I am a newcomer in this country. I'm here for better life.
Our lives matter like anyone else, and we definitely belong in this country. We are here to stand up to say it need an end to racism.
These workers have a right to be paid fairly. They have a right to be able to put food on the table without going to a food bank after this employer finished them off. They have a right to be sick and to take the day off.
If we have to house visit those bosses, knock their doors, shame them, we will do that.
You're here because you built this empire for them. And the pandemic is showing exactly that they're using it to exploit you. Where are you when an employer like this is exploiting these workers? Doug Ford, where are you? You better listen up. Because you know what? You're not elected for life. Who got the power? We got the power.
You are the future. You bring hope. And yes, you're damn right. You can shut it down.
Our Haudenosaunee system is based on a matriarch society. We believe that the women carry that power. Our clan mothers, they make those decisions. They solve the conflicts. They are the peacemakers. They are the lawmakers, and the women are seen as the powerful ones.
The closer work is to work that's done in the home, which is typically care work, so child care, elder care, health care, housework, that type of thing. It's those types of work done in the home when they're done in the sector are often female-dominated industries. The more the work comes from the heart, the less it's actually recognized as being important work. When I worked in private childcare, I found that to make sure that things looked okay was more important than describing to families a situation that might have been uncomfortable for them. Working in public childcare, it was always the needs of the children that came first. And if there was ever an issue with that, in public childcare, you typically have a group of people that would come together to discuss the needs. Where with private childcare, they make decisions for their financial, economic bottom line. They're not making decisions based on the children. The heart is not in the money. The heart is in the care. COVID has exacerbated things even worse. We're now looking at centers that do not have appropriate PPE, although it's been promised by the ministry. We're looking at centers who are not having children in their rooms, not because of a wait list, but because there are no staff. We have a childcare staffing crisis right now. There are centers that have asked parents to only bring their children on alternating days because they don't have enough staff to care for all of the children who are in the center. There are rooms that are closed because of staffing. We don't have ECEs who are in the field because they're not paid appropriately. They're not recognized or valued for their work. They're not giving basic things like proper break time, proper planning time, time off of the floor to be able to have that work done that needs to be done to communicate with families and to work with boards. It's a crisis. Staffing is a crisis right now. So what we really need to have are appropriate wages for early childhood educators and childcare staff. We need to have decent work, paid programming time, breaks, where staff are not expected to do work outside of those paid hours. Benefits, paid vacation, and pension, and all of those things that make a full and comprehensive package for educators to want to stay within this field. We have free public education for every child who is 4 and up in the province of Ontario. Why does that not extend to our youngest children? Of course that needs to be available for every single child in Ontario and in Canada. It's time for Ontario to get on board with that. And right now what we're looking at is Ontario now about to lose over $1 billion by the end of March if this deal isn't signed. Through COVID, we've seen that astronomical number of women have left the workforce. And if we were able to have public childcare available, these women would then have that option to send their child to a loving and caring educator, and they would be able to have that choice then to be able to re-enter the workforce. The childcare community is honestly what gives me hope. The way that educators, childcare workers are coming together, the way that we build relationships and hold each other up and empower each other, and the way that we know how important this work is. That's what gives me hope. Yeah, I think that there has been quite a few communities all across Ontario who have been starting to organize and come together, especially as we get closer to losing that $1 billion. The end of March is not far, and the election is not far after that. So I want to tell women across Ontario to vote for childcare.
My childhood's not for profit. Universal childcare for all.
I know our collective strength will win. We just need to join. We need to communicate with each other, lift each other up, and not be siloed in our individual causes. And I think that more than ever today, we are ready and we are able to do so.
Call it the red road when you start to reclaim what was taken from you, from generations of residential schools and colonial violence. So as I started to walk this red road, one of the lessons I learned was the responsibilities and the roles of women in our communities. One of them is to protect the water. We are the water carriers. We carry the water of life within us. I've had 3 children, and that connection to growing them inside of your body in this magic state of water, it's one that is very respected and sacred in our teachings. Here on Six Nations, we have our river, the Grand River, and understanding the treaties and the issues that go on with that. The Haldeman Treaty, 6 miles each side of the Grand River, seeing the state of the river right now, knowing that most of us would never even let our kids swim in that river anymore. My brother, he went out to Wet'suwet'en. That's when I first saw the Wenziqua, which is their sacred headwaters in the Wet'suwet'en territory. And this river is pristine. It is glacier fed. I took a drink from the river, and I'd never done that before, ever. It tingled on your tongue. It was cold, and it was alive, and it was electric, and I could feel it calling me to it, saying, I need your help. And I feel like that's what the water is saying to us now, is like, protect me. I need you to stand up. And as a woman, I heard that. I was called to save this river, as there's a pipeline that's drilling underneath this river, where the salmon for all of the tribes spawn, where the life force, the veins of the lands are in this river. You have this corporation supported by the government. So they issued an injunction to the pipeline to be able to do their work there. And that's how we were arrested, is because we were going against that injunction. The areas that the pipeline company has clear cut, it looks just like death. And the people that have stood there through the test of time, the people that call this land their home, call it Mordor. And the people, when they're talking about Mordor, about this death up on the mountain where the pipeline is destroying it, you see the pain in them. It's not just trees, it's not just the forest, it is their family that is suffering. It was November 18th, and we were at the territory, at the river, and we got word that they were going to raid. And it was about 100 RCMP came up in these buses, and there was 8 of us on the bridge. 2 men, and the rest were women, elders. We told the police, we're in ceremony with the water. You can't come here, you're not welcome. This is not your territory. And saw them marching towards us, and the man at the front, he had this large stick, and he was waving it around, and they were chanting, and they all just went like that together. We were standing there singing on this bridge, and I'm just thinking, wow, they are here to dominate, here to oppress. Standing beside the Wet'suwet'en people for their water. There's snipers on you, there's helicopters flying over, there's attack dogs being held by their leashes ready to go. And I felt like this oppression of silence, like, oh, I should run and hide, or I'm gonna get in trouble. How are my kids gonna feel seeing their mom arrested? And standing with those women, I was like, this is that oh crap moment when you're like, it's right here in front of you. You are about to be arrested, and this could be violent. I listened inside of me, and I heard that water. I heard the Wenziqua. I heard all of the years, hundreds of years of my ancestors saying, stand up. One of the elders, we call her Auntie Janet, out in Wet'suwet'en. She's just a tiny little woman, and I remember standing on that bridge, and the dogs and the helicopters and the guns, and I just felt this small, warm, sort of soft hand, and I just thought, if this woman is going to stand here on her land against all of these men and all of this violence, I am not moving. We have to stand up against this. And so, I did. And when I was taken off the bridge in handcuffs, criminalized for something that I felt was right, something I knew in my heart I had to do, was to defend that river. The police officer put me in the back of his car and shut the door, and I'm sitting there looking up the window, and he winked at me like that. And I had no power in that moment, and I was like, that really sat with me for a long time, of just that one little moment of his dominance over me. my first time in court. I've never been in trouble with the law. I've never, had any criminal arrests or anything like that. And so I'm going into court for my first time in my long johns. So they only let me wear long johns, and shackles on my ankles and my wrists, shuffling along in front of this court full of strangers and officials and police and media to sit in front of a judge. I felt, I don't know, like some kind of psychopath that was going on trial. And I'm like, really, I know what I was doing was right. So there's these moments as a woman that I think we have to redefine what is right for us and what laws we condone for ourselves and how we operate. It is shocking to me that, that as a country, Canada, who prides ourselves in the beauty of our nature, the beauty of our landscapes, we are not standing up to protect them. Whose laws are we operating in? And when I was there, these traditional hereditary chiefs that have been passed these titles thousands of years, they thanked me for protecting their land with them. That was the law that I was operating at, this law of the land. We must protect the water, we must protect the land at all costs, even if it goes against what society says we should do.
I love my job. I love the interactions with my residents, and they love us, and we have this amazing family atmosphere. My co-workers are amazing, and they're a great support system. One of the major issues happening in long-term care right now is the staffing crisis. PSWs and nurses are leaving the workforce in droves because of the workload or because of the disrespect with the 1%. They're leaving to go to other fields and they're not returning. Bill 124 is a wage freeze of 1% across the board for all healthcare workers. It does not affect the for-profit. It affects the non-for-profit and the government-funded organizations. Our bargaining rights has been taken out of our hands. You're healthcare heroes, but you're not worth more than a 1%. One of the major things that's happening with long-term care right now is burnout. I remember having lost this one resident. A few minutes after her being pronounced, I had to help bag and tag the body in this Ziploc type bag. And this resident was warm to the touch. She had barely been gone, and what was happening was unfathomable. We had to put her in a body bag, and then we had to take her out of the building. And before they took the body away, they sprayed her down. They sprayed the resident down. It's a memory that will stay with me for the rest of my life. And a lot of PTSD happened because of this pandemic. It just took over. There's nothing we could have done to stop it. We tried to lessen it, but we kept losing them one after the other. And I think the sounds and the noises they would make will haunt me forever. They weren't sending them to the hospitals at all. We cried with them, we held their hands, came up with iPads and cell phones so that we can FaceTime with their families so that they can say goodbye over the internet. Like, we did the best that we could for them with what resources that we have, but it's still the residents in their beds, scared and alone, dying among strangers. Oh my God, sorry. The worst part of this all is they're not doing anything right now to fix it. So we have everything that we need to fix long-term care. We put care before profits. So we get rid of these short shifts and we create more full-time with benefit jobs to sustain those that have 2 and 3 jobs in this industry. We don't privatize long-term care in our hospitals. The care homes that are for profit, we need to phase them out because they have the worst track record. and it needs to be government run and non-for-profit. They need to be regularly inspected, and they need to be held accountable for the way that our residents are housed and treated at long-term care. Let's make sure that we work together and we fix long-term care so it will be a place that we would want to put our loved ones, that we would want to end up one day. Let's make a plan. Let's do this. We have time. We have resources. Let's do this together.
One of the biggest lessons that I've learned on this journey for defending our land and standing up for something that's bigger than us is that connection that we have as women and that strength that we have when we come together. Show me a group of inspired and passionate, empowered women, and they can do anything.
I came from India in 2007, and I always wanted to be a machinist. But since I moved here, I had to pay the bills and rent and everything. So I work as a esthetician for 10 to 11 years. They don't pay well. Sometimes there is no enough work. It's very difficult. I wanted to work in the mechanical field since I like it. I try in a different companies, but they always hire me as a general labor. And that profession is very low paying when I don't get the opportunity what I want to do. I want to do the studies, but I was looking for the school which I can't afford at the time. But during the COVID, I lost my job. For 1.5 years, I was stay home, and that time I was looking for the school too. And then my husband, he helped me, and finally we found one program which the steel worker set up this program, this course to do the studies. They help us for the financially, so we can change our future. We can get the skill job, because in this world nowadays the skill job is must. It's very necessary. When we know the skill job, we have the good raise, good future. Everything is better. So then the steel worker, they help us. They found me the course. I did it in the Mississauga. The course is for the 6 months. They told us like, okay, when we finish the school, they're gonna find the job and everything. And actually that happens. As soon as I finished my school, within 2 weeks, I found my new job as a CNC machine operator. And with that, I get the good raise, the same as male workers, because normally for the female workers, they don't get the same raise as the male workers. Finally, with these skills and with the help of steel worker, I get this opportunity. So since then, I am working as a CNC machine operator. I want to do more further studies in my same field as a CNC machinist and programmer, become like a mechanical engineer. Thanks to a steel worker program, which really helps me, because during the COVID, I lose all the hopes, but they help me, they give me the hopes for the better future, better life, and because of them, I achieve my goals. And still, there is more goals, and hopefully soon I will do it that too. Happy International Women's Day. Stay positive and stay hopeful.
Going against what society has told me to be has actually been the most enlightening process, teaching me who I really am and not all these shoulds.
I'm so proud of Torontonians for standing up to what we have seen try to take over the street of Ottawa.
We came together, a range of labor, community organizations, who felt that we had to show our solidarity with the people of Ottawa, who have been under siege for the last 3 weeks, under siege by a convoy that was funded by the far right, that was organized by the far right, and that was led by the far right.
The past few years have been filled with a lot of grief.
COVID stress and even trauma is widespread. Increasing numbers of workers are now being fired for not getting vaccinated, and there is no government plan for them to regain a livelihood.
We've had anxieties about the state of the world, suffered from precarious employment.
History tells us that desperate people can be manipulated, and their fear channeling into racism.
They're there to xenophobia and will bring a world, frankly, of white supremacy.
We must remind ourselves that the truly evil politics of this right led to unimaginable horror.
The vast majority of people are standing up, not only here, but across this country. Community Solidarity Ottawa marched last week. People in their thousands came up the following day spontaneously to block convoys.
We will not capitulate to the myths that there is no COVID.
Yeah. We may be done with COVID, but COVID is not done with us yet.
A future that is better for all is not one that puts immunocompromised and disabled people at risk every day. It is not one that allows students and working people to risk their lives every time they go into school and to work.
We will not be bamboozled about the impact of COVID. Vaccines matter. Masks matter. Healthcare matter. Healthcare workers matter.
We must also find a way to talk with those who are feeling disenfranchised and who could be drawn to the wrong solution.
It is only together that we can build a strong support system, giving people with lots of grief a place of love to turn to.
We will push for government accountability, push for better measures.
All the while standing in solidarity with Indigenous peoples and demanding land back.
Because we know the majority are decent people in this country and they will respond to a positive message of hope, optimism, dignity, and respect.
Together, we will fight for social, economic, racial, and climate justice. Keep standing, keep going forward.
The fact that you decided that it was worth to stand in the face of hate is a testament to the fact that we will win.
This Islamophobic attack in London has happened at a time when we had not yet recovered from the discovery of the remains of 215 Indigenous children in a residential school building in Kamloops, British Columbia.
The proper memorial for this family is that we look at systemic racism and that we do something about it.
Both are rooted in racism and the ideology of white supremacy. We need to acknowledge all the wrongs that have been done to the Indigenous people, to the Black people, to the Chinese, Canadian, and Muslims, from land occupation to residential schools, to racist policing, to head tax, to internment camps. I can't name them all. This is not the time to give up your space. This is the time to reach out to these communities also affected by racism and our allies and make a common front to defeat the ideology that promotes hatred and killing inside Canada and elsewhere.
Don't be afraid to struggle. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fall. Don't be afraid to scratch your knees and scar up your elbows and, take a tumble. Because it's those moments when we face our fears, when we look it in the eye and we say, I know you're there, but I know I got this. You got this.
Over the last year, we've been struggling with the crisis of COVID, but we can't separate COVID from the broader picture. The fact that we've had an economic crisis, a climate crisis that is part and parcel of this, and of course integrated in all of it is structural systemic racism. We've seen workers suffering on the front lines. They've been fighting back, but racialized workers, women workers, particularly in long-term care, in the hospitals, the grocery stores, transit workers, they've all been there fighting every single day. And I know that employers are asking a lot of concessions. We've been certainly seeing that in bargaining in our own union and in my own local. We had racialized women out after they rejected a number of tentative agreements that just were not good enough. And they understood that they were part of a global movement to fight back and not allow the employers, the corporations, the government to take advantage of this crisis to ratchet down more and more difficult circumstances for people. So I believe that we're going to see good fight backs, strong fight backs. We may not win them all, but I think that's the mood that I feel out there.
My pronouns are they, them. I am neurodivergent and a survivor.
My Auntie Jessica is very nice. She is a very good teacher. She is very patient and caring, and she is a very good dog sitter and the best vegan pancake maker.
Prior to COVID, I was already dealing with the aftermath of leaving an abusive relationship and finding a new home for myself. And once COVID hit, I, for 6 months, was on layoff, struggling to pay my bills, wondering if my job was going to be there. I was feeling really isolated.
It was difficult for me during COVID because I couldn't get to see friends and family.
I was living alone without access to my family, my friends, or the work that I love, and I felt really expendable by my workplace and the government.
And during school, I had to go on virtual for at least 3 months, maybe even longer last year, and it was really hard for me. What helped me during COVID was definitely my mom, my dad, and my brother for always being there for me.
When I talk about being able to overcome a lot of the struggles that I had this past year, I did because of the very specific and real contributions of the women in my life, whether it be coworkers, union members.
Oh yeah. Tia, my babysitter, also helped me by giving me food every once a week.
My family and friends.
And my dog as well. He used to give me like lots of warm cuddles.
They were all there for me and supported me every step of the way.
I want to say thank you to everybody that has been helping us during COVID, because it really helps our families and our friends and everybody in the world right now. A lot of the workers that I've helped are also women, and I want to say thank you to you guys as well. When I got my second vaccine, I was really happy, and it made me feel like I'm not going to get my family sick, or I'm not going to get sick, but I can, but like it makes me feel a bit more safer.
That is a way that I know we excel in support and collaboration.
I know all of this can be hard, but together we can make it work. Happy IWD!
Migrante Ontario salute the working class women, peasant women, and women migrant workers essential in battling the pandemic around the globe. With them, we stand resolute in our fight against anti-worker policies, negligence, and exploitation in our homeland and in host countries like so-called Canada. Throughout the last couple of years, even before the pandemic, women of the working class already suffered marginalization and exploitation rooted in imperialism and reactionary neoliberal policies imposed by state forces. Since the onset of the pandemic, we had continued to experience this effect disproportionately. Lack of social protection and health care, food and job security, violence, abuse, and exploitation. In Canada, many women migrant workers experience abuse and exploitation in the workplace.
And we are calling the President of the Philippines to stop labor export policy for us not to go abroad and work and separated to our family.
The Philippine government has lacked an adequate response to the global health crisis and instead responded with a militarist lockdown that impacts jobs and livelihood for Filipino across the country. Throughout the history of migrant women worldwide, they have been part of women's struggle to liberate themselves from oppression by the ruling class. That is why Migrante Ontario demand a robust support system to ensure their continuous safety, good health, and dignity, to address their needs We also call on the Philippine government to crack down the illegal recruitment, human trafficking, and other crimes, especially towards women. Finally, we reiterate our call to the government to stop using the labor export policy to respond to the growing unemployment in the country. Instead, the government should provide aid and protection to better lives of Filipino workers here in Canada and around the globe.
As a Filipino migrant worker here in Canada, we are asking for equal rights and protection, especially those who are undocumented workers like me. Now we are working for our papers and we are calling the Prime Minister to give us this status for all. We are working for you and for all of us here, for our family in the Philippines.
Fight for our rights! Come join us!
Abate, babae, palaban, militante!
Stay hopeful, stay positive, and we're gonna get it done. Never lose hope and don't feel that we are lower than any men's or anyone. We can do it what men can do better than them. Just we need the one opportunity and get courage and be positive to do what we want to do.
جنم برنگ خواه، بدنگ خواه، بزمان و چاند خواه. جنم دایکم، خودی مافم و تکوشین ده سربازم. لیلا قاسم، سارا و بریتانم. هشت آداره لحمو جنین کتکار ین جیهانه و لحمو جنین کردین تکوشر پیروز به. جن جیان آزادی.
ناویم یلدزه از لاکی خواه تفاتن قناده تو دولت ترکیه پر ظلمات دا باوی ما خوانگ برای ما ترکی ما مکتب هکر ما ترکی پینت زانه زمانه ما کرمانجی و چونکه خوانگ برای ما کس که ترکی پینت زانه دست حال ظلمات سروانه دوام دکه ممانی که لاکی می ظلمیه نوینه امانی لاکی خواه رام هاتم رویم هاتم قناده قناده جی اماتنی حوال ما کردش درنیه حوال ما مرجی جنجی گمارا دستک درکتن از ایوانا رازی ما یه ترم برا ترکیه دولتی ترکیه جی برا دست خواه سر جنا بکشینه سر کرمانجی ما بکشینه بس امرا ملاتی ما زندان دا درخه
Ben bir Kürt genç kızıyım. Buraya Türkiye'de yaşadığım zulümlerden dolayı ailemle kaçıp geldim. Orada kendi dilimizi konuşmamıza müsaade etmiyorlardı. Bize kendi dilimizde eğitim verilmiyordu ve çok fazla üzerimizde baskı vardı. Kendi Kürt derneğimize gitmemize müsaade edilmiyordu. Bu yüzden yaşadığımız sıkıntılardan dolayı ailemle beraber kaçıp Kanada'ya sığındık. Buradaki Kürt komünitesine kaydımızı yaptırdık. Buradaki insanlar, kadınlar, erkekler bize çok fazla yardımcı oluyorlar. Herkese teşekkür ederiz.
همجی و دم ها بو جترکی رویانا قانادا ظلم لما دبو عسكر دوتن دچون دگون یعنی زاری نویر بکرمانجی مکتب شور بکرم و دیات مزار خطوب کردن خلقی پخست اماتن سخن میشه قانادا بون مگو برای زاری ما ازیاد کشم برای زاری ما نکشینن ظلم لما دبو عسكر و پولیس و تم دهاتن دچون دگو کرمانجی شور کردی زاری وامن کردی زاری ما تام زاری ما ندادن مکتب دگو کرمانجی شور کردی زاری دگو هم نور نمکتب چرا من گوتی سیز کردسونز کرد دیگه نور نمکته هر تشتر نوه هیرو تشتر نوه سبا تشتر نوه و دیگه مرا و قاپی خواه کلید کرد خواهمات نقانادا سخن میشه قانادا بون
As Kurdish women of Zara Free Women's Collective in Toronto continue our struggle against the intertwined logic of colonialism, nationalism and patriarchy wherever we migrate to. On this International Women's Day, we would like to emphasize that the patriarchal capitalist nation-state mentality that kills women on a daily basis is also responsible for the destruction of Mother Earth and occupation of our land. Yet, as women of Rojava proved in the revolution in Syria since 2012, an ecological, democratic world is only possible with women being at the forefront of the revolution. Let's not forget, we as feminists need to stand together against these destructive structures and build an alternative world through our struggle. Happy International Women's Day, and long live feminist solidarity. Jin Jian Azadi.
We together have the collective power to win in this new world. Join the many struggles that are going on all around us. And happy International Women's Day. And we will see you next year in the streets.
The pandemic hurt us, but building mass movements in the streets, working class. Won't go back, but they attack. We deserve more. We're organized to colonize, repair, to fund the iron fist, to fund care. Green and kind and left behind's what we fight for. Sisters now. Change won't come unless we make it now. Sisters now. Time to leave it all in the field. Sisters now. Prize the future, gotta take it now. Sisters now. You can knock us down, but we'll never yield. Rise above this pandemic, because we are relentless, resilient, and we will never give up.